Hey, John.
Hey, Zach, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
All right.
Renee, can you do the request to speak thing? Renee, can you hear me? Renee, she is no longer here, so she might be having trouble. Once she's on, we'll get started. Jorge said he's getting his parents from the airport, so he'll listen in on his phone if he can. I haven't heard back from Adiz, so we're just gonna move on.
Okay.
Can you hear me, John?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you still hear me?
I can't hear you, John, if you're talking.
Okay. How about now? Can you hear me?
No, John. John, I can't hear you. No, I can't. Can you hear me? Renee, can you? Oh, you're there. Okay. Okay. Renee, I think you're now in.
Can you hear me? I'm trying to think. Can you hear me now? How about now? Can you hear me?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Renee, can you speak so I know you're there or that we can hear you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I don't hear you, Renee.
Now?
Oh, John can hear her. Why can't I?
But no one can hear me?
Okay, I hear you, John, that you're hearing her. I'm not hearing her. Maybe. Oh, here. My volume somehow got turned way down.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Renee, can you speak? Yeah, gosh. All right.
All right. I was like, I didn't
You know what? My computer is actually kind of acting up a little bit, so like it's kind of bouncing, but I think we're good now. Okay, let's get started then. Let me pop this up. All right, so today we're just going to talk about preparing for the season and kind of some of the planning we can do for that. Okay, so why prepare for the season or plan for the season? The most basic form, it sets us a guide to determine the course of action we're going to take to achieve the results that we want. So we have whatever results we want to do. This gives us the guide to determine the course of action. So we don't necessarily have to plan every action we take, but can we plan out what are the goals and what are the things that are going to guide us so that whenever we have to make decisions, we refer back to that. Minimize undesirable problems, so parent issues, player issues, things like that. And helps us keep things in perspective. It helps us, our players, and our parents keep things in perspective. So if we can come in with a proper plan, communicate that plan, we can remember what the perspective is that we're trying to approach everything is. So to you guys, if we're trying to plan and prepare for the season, to keep in mind those things, what are some of the factors we might consider, or who or what is involved?
So I used I went to your website and I pulled your parent meeting agenda or your preseason meeting agenda for parents, and I kind of recreated my own from that.
Okay.
So just things like what we're going to train for, and what goals we have, and for results of games, and for player development, and for just kind of looking at, hey, there's 10 weeks of training and kind of what'll fit into that, things like that.
Okay. Good. Well, you got the head start on like our
Yeah.
second to last slide or last slide. So good.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. It was great. I think I just downloaded it and then just kind of recreated it. Just picked things that I wanted to use. So that was really helpful.
Good, good. Renee, any other thoughts to add?
Yeah, we could also consider the parents' perspective. Like might not understand it the way that we would like to initially state the goals, and so to kind of change it so that it's more understandable. That maybe what their goals aren't reachable at the time that your goals.
Okay, who's they? Are you talking about the players or parents or who?
Like the parents' goals for the team.
Okay, good. And I think that's a big, big thing is, and I think most issues we see in youth soccer come from parents and coaches or the club having different definitions and different visions of what the experience is going to look like. So, the factors for me, if I break it down to three things, is our decisions and us and what do we do, the players and their development, and then the parents and how they influence things, and how can we, um, take in consideration all those things. So, our actions. Answer the following questions, and I'll just kind of put these questions out to you, and you give me your thoughts. So, have you guys thought about what your goals are for the season?
So the ones I came up with were things like I want my players running their own warm-up sessions without me having to get involved. So the first 10, 15 minutes before practice or a game, I want to be able to maybe finish setting things up, right? So that was one thing that I stated to the parents, and then just a couple of other things, but that's kind of one of the big ones. And just,
Okay.
Yeah. So I would just say that, and then there's a couple of others, but.
Okay. Renee, do you have any? Have you given this much thought?
Yes, in ways, but there are goals on different levels, like how I handle things and how and then player development also.
Okay.
Team
Can you
development.
give us an example of maybe the two, like something you were talking about player development and then something else? Like
Okay. Player development, something along the lines of this, but in a more efficient way.
Okay.
Based on how the play is developing, and then a goal for me would be instead of change sessions into a more unique way that is more challenging.
Okay. Okay. So would you define, either one of you, how would you define success for the season? So this spring season was a success. How would you determine that?
Making sure everyone had fun, right, is kind of the first one. I don't need kids leaving, hating soccer at the end of spring. And,
Good.
And then making the progression on the different skill developments we're focused on, like, switching the point of attack or, different defending concepts or, things like that, just feeling like we made progress where they're doing kind of what we're teaching.
Okay, good. Renee, anything to add?
Nope, that's pretty perfect.
Next. What do you expect? So this is just for you. What do you expect from the performance environment? What I mean from that is, what do you expect things to look like? What do you expect the games to look like? What do you expect the outcome of things to be. So you might be working on something with your team, but you just know that. And this was the case for me last fall when I was working with the 03 boys. I knew that we were going to get smacked every game.
Mhm.
So, and I had that expectation, and I knew that. And so I knew that my focus was going to have to, I was going to have to work on diverting the focus from that to something else more positive. So you guys just think about that. Think about knowing your team and what do you expect the environment to be? That could be the opponents or what the games are going to be like. That could be, can you know that you've got some problem parents, or do you know how your parents are? Do you know what the club and how that's going to affect you? Maybe policies and things about the club. Maybe you know that your field space is awful or not awful or too small or really muddy or just different things that can impact the environment or the experience. Try to have know as much as you can and be expecting that, and then plan accordingly depending on how that affects your desired outcomes. Think about what values guide your decisions. So, for instance, I'll give you an example again from the 03s that I've worked with in the fall. Is we decided a value is we're never going to give up no matter what. We're down 14-0. We're going to keep playing hard. Or do you believe in every kid playing a certain amount of time? And so no matter what happens, even if you're losing 1-0 and the game's getting close and one of the kids who's not very strong hasn't gotten in her a lot of time, you put her in anyway. Things like that. Do either of you have, off the top of your head, can think of a value that you know that guides decisions that you make?
So for my team, it's about being competitive. So, one of the things the parents want is for them to be competitive, not necessarily win the game, but they want to see them growing from the perspective of when they show up, they're working really hard, and whether we get a result or not. So it's a weird trade-off because I've had situations where I will sit kids for an extended period, where they'll get less than 25% of a game, but I'm only having that ever happen if I see them stop competing. Not if they make a mistake, right? Never something like that. And I feel like because our team plays at that A level, I think the parents are all on board with that, and they kind of expect it, which is different than maybe when they were U9s, U10s.
Well, and I think that that's fair, right? You're making that decision based off of effort and behavior and attitude, type of thing, where they're not competing their hardest, as opposed to, okay, kids make mistakes, they have bad days, but so that's good. I think that's a good value. That sure, hey, you're not playing that much. Do you know why? Because you're not trying hard. That's something that they can directly control. They can control that with no matter what. So, Renee, how about you?
I'd say the biggest value would be positivity through coaching and teaching them leadership through positivity.
Okay, good. Excellent. Something else for you is how you want to improve as a coach. So you guys have both kind of touched on that in terms of, Renee talking about how she wants to work on her designing her session plans. John wanting to help empower the girls to be able to be more self-sufficient or responsible. So good. Those, think about the other ways that you might want to try and improve and how you can kind of plan for that. And then, of course, what style of play and what skills do you want to implement? We've touched on that on the last few weeks, even in our discussions that we've had. Again, consider that in terms of how you're going to plan. Player development considerations. So, what should the players be learning this season? We've kind of talked about that, right, with the seasonal development plans a few weeks ago. Decide what it is that you want to be working on, and how are you going to create a plan for that. So I've talked to both of you about that. I hope you've continued to think about it and maybe started to put some stuff down on paper, maybe. Okay, what values life lessons? So Renee kind of talked about positivity, so that's good. John, I would say yours goes around like responsibility, maybe taking the initiative. Again, other types of values can be added in as well. Renee, can you share us another one that you might want to instill in your girls?
A major one that we focus on is self-confidence and having confidence in their teammates and as a team as a whole.
Okay, good. So how do you try to implement that?
Well, actually, being confident is one of our team goals, and so I'll ask them. We'll go over it every practice and game and ask them how they think that can be instilled. I mean, in other terms, and working on creating friendships or bonds, and then implementing that on the field.
Okay, good. Okay, and then also consider what is the level of your team, of your players, and that means in regard to their development level in soccer and their maturity level. And that compared to each other. So, do you have kids that are significantly more mature than others, significantly better as a player than others? How are they compared to their competition? And what are they in terms of where they ideally where we want them to be, and how can we try to balance that? So as you're kind of planning your development plans, can you take that in consideration if you have a larger discrepancy within your team, or you know that they're going to struggle in the games, or whatever that is, and how can you try to take that into account as you're planning your sessions and season? Okay, so how do we plan for these? Obviously, seasonal development plan. We've talked about. I've said that word 1,000 times. Have either of you guys started to? Have you guys have more of a clear picture on your development plans?
Yeah, I put one together for the spring, and I gave that to the parents, and it was just very high level, but I got a lot of really positive feedback from just sharing it, and they were, I talked to one parent, they were really excited about just kind of understanding a little bit, and it was just keywords like acceleration and switching the point of attack, right? So it was very simple, like not a lot of detail, but just kind of breaking it down like that, and they took really well to it.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's great, and that goes a long way, and that helps them realize you've got a plan, you know what you're doing, and hopefully that helps keep their focus. Maybe you can always refer back and say, "Look, remember this is what we're working on." So win and loss aside, we started doing that a little bit better. So that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Renee, what about you?
I don't have an official thing that I have sent to the parents yet. I have like kind of a rough draft, but
okay.
Would you be willing to review it before I send it out?
Of course. Yeah. So email that to me whenever you want, and I'll look at it.
Okay.
Yeah. So good. And whenever you ready, I mean, hey, even if the season's a week or two or something in, and you haven't sent to the parents, that's fine. But just whenever you can get to that. And most important is that you have a plan and know what you want to do, and that you can follow it. So determine team values and reinforce them. So you said, Renee, that you've your team has a value of or goal of becoming confident and being confident and then trying to be positive. How did you come up with that?
Mostly just by focusing, realizing their body language throughout practices. If they weren't winning, they were very down on themselves. So I started to enforce, the positivity and being confident in yourself, regardless of losing, kind of go hand in hand.
Okay.
And it seemed to really make them more competitive as a unit.
Okay, good. So did you decide on your own, like, hey, this is going to be something we're going to focus on?
Yeah.
Okay, good. John, have you had any kinds of discussions on like team values with your girls at all?
Not with them directly yet, but certainly the discipline and you said something different, but like having them be a little bit more self-sufficient with things like the warm-up is kind of how I view the word discipline in this case. Just, when you get to practice, you're here to work. We're not here to goof around. Those types of things for them. That being one of a couple that I'm using as like themes for the spring.
Okay. So set expectations. So this is definitely coming straight from you. Here's what your expectations are, and then you have to uphold them. So with the values, make sure you reinforce them. So Renee, I like to hear that you talk about them every day of practice and try to reiterate them. So with expectations, the same thing. So for instance, whenever I coach team, something very small, but to me, I always make sure I do is they have to tuck their shirt in at practice. That's a quirk of mine, if you want to call it, but I like, our shirts are tucked in, so I always enforce it all the time, and I uphold it. That's what the expectation is. Or before you get to practice, which John, you did this at your session. I came and watched you. Before practice, it's, hey, you guys are juggling, and if they're not doing it, hey, come on, what are you supposed to be doing today, or what are you supposed to do when you get here? And so I noticed that you did that, John, which is good. So whatever the expectations are, and again, if that means, Renee, if that means so we're being positive all the time, good. And when you see one of the girls maybe speak negatively about herself or about a teammate or a situation, you address it. You say, hey, can you maybe think of a more positive way to look at that or say that? Okay. So determine playing time. Grouping if you need to in your sessions, feedback procedures. So, John, like you kind of already mentioned, hey, you're not going to play as much if you're not giving the effort that is expected, and that's great. Anyway, feedback procedures. I just kind of mean, how are you giving maybe to individual players, or how are you approaching it? So Renee, if you're trying to tell them to be positive and then you start yelling at them saying, what's your problem? You guys are terrible, then obviously you're not modeling that. So just thinking about that. Do you have discussions with the kids individually before, after practice, or during it? Just saying nothing super formal, but just like, hey, I thought you had a really, really good day today. Or, hey, today, not so great. Do you know why I'm saying that? And whatever, having small discussions like that. And have a meeting. So, John, obviously, I think it sounds like you've had a meeting with your parents. But have you had a meeting with your players, just you and your players?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Renee, have you, did you in the fall or ever at all?
No, haven't.
Okay. So that might be something you do just with them. Depending on what you're going to discuss in your parent meeting, maybe you have the players, maybe not you, Renee, your girls are kind of young, but John, yours are at an age where maybe they can be part of that meeting with the parents. It could be a whole thing and be part of it.
Yeah.
Or you could have a separate one. Renee, I would definitely have a separate one because the verbiage you're going to use to talk to them is much different than the adults. But maybe have a quick meeting and go over the team values, go over the expectations, things like that. Doesn't have to be long, depending on what you want to cover, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and so forth. So what might be some ways that we can influence parent behavior?
It's a good question. I've just found it helpful to talk to each parent one-on-one, or at least one parent for each of the kids one-on-one at some point during each season, and just kind of giving them open-ended questions of, what are your expectations, and just trying to get a sense of what they're looking for too. Most of the time they're pretty reasonable. I've never had somebody be ridiculous with different behavior too often.
Okay. So. But hey, that's good and you never know though, because I've had a parent come up to me and talk about his 6-year-old son like he's a professional player and talk about we're I don't know if I'm gonna sign. He actually used the word sign with you, and talking about how, hey, here's what you get and here's what I get out of this deal and blah blah blah. Like, dude, your kid's 6, just sign him up for soccer or not. So, but again, there's this. But it's good to know that having the individual talks is good. Anything else from either of you?
Yeah, the individual talks seem to help. I like to point out I think that just more information helps them to a certain extent. Like if you point out, this is what we worked on this week and this is what they did individually, that helps them out a lot.
Good. I think the key there is sharing the information, keeping them up to date, and communicating with them. So, John, you said you shared your seasonal development plan. So, throughout the season, then, are you going back and saying, hey, remember this, remember that, or hey, this week at practice we worked on such and such, and say, remember it's week 3, and that's week 3 on the development plan. So, let's look for that in the game this weekend, or what have you. So again, have a meeting. As we've already kind of talked about, John, I know you've had one. Set the expectations for them. What do you expect from them? I think if you set that right up off the bat, say, hey, I don't want you yelling, coaching during the games. I don't want you to be yelling at the referees or the other team, even if they're doing it back. Bring the kids in a timely manner. Tell me if they're not going to be at practice. Those types of things. And be forthright. So on the right track there with, here's the plan. And just be upfront and honest. And weekly education or / updates. So like Renee, perfect, just like you said. Keep them up to date on here's what we did, here's what we're working on, and here's what we did, and here's how it looked. You can always throw in, and to me that's education up. If you just kind of talk to them, walk them through the process, remind them what you're working on, you help frame their point of view, their perspective, their frame of mind. And again, if you've got, like, if you're working on a new move or something, this particularly like at your age, Renee, you're working on a scissors or a step over, find a video of it, send it over to them so they know what it looks like, because they might not have ever seen it before. Again, even if you come across an article or something, maybe share that with them. Anything like that. I think you can add that in as a bonus, but that type of stuff I think goes a long way. And clear, honest communication. So be clear, be honest. Use your judgment, but a lot of times I feel like coaches feel like they need to keep parents in the dark or something, but you don't. If you do, that's what creates problems. Just be upfront, be honest with it, tell them the truth, and they really appreciate it. And there's no need there's never coaches versus parents. It should be coaches and parents, or with parents and together and being on the same page. And so I try to take that frame of mind, as opposed to we being different parties pulling at the same rope. So how do we minimize problems? This kind of goes back to, gosh, I can't remember which one of you said it earlier about, oh, Renee, you did, about how what the parents might be, what their goals might be, right, versus what our goals might be.
Right.
So I think that comes to here where you talk about expectations versus reality. And I know I've talked to you, I've said that, I think, before to both of you, like in the Ajax office when I was talking to all the staff. You know, it all comes down to what do your parents expect, or what do your players expect? What do you expect, right? And then what actually happens. So obviously in this picture, if you're expecting this straightforward, smooth ride, and all of a sudden you go to the path and realize there's 3 ditches and a tightrope and a water, you know, you're going to be really disappointed in whoever, whatever obstacle course you just signed up for. But the same goes for soccer, right? Parents are expecting to win all the games, or they're expecting us to look like, you know, the Barcelona first team. Then they're going to be disappointed when they go and see that their kids can't kick the ball straight. But if we can help them realize, look, they're only 8 or they're only 12, and this is what soccer looks like, or this is what we're focused on, and then they see that come out, I think that, you know, that helps try to set their expectations realistically. That comes with me. I tell all my parents before a season, I say I'm going to sit down during games, because I do, and I don't say very much. And I'm upfront with that, because I've had parents in the past come say, you don't do anything, all you do is sit there. Well, I'm not really just sitting there, but I'm not yelling all the time. I'm watching, I'm coaching kids little here and there and pulling them off the field and talking to them. But again, if parents are expecting you to look like whatever, I had that picture before, Will Ferrell and kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
But if they're expecting something like that, then, and they think that that's what coaching's supposed to look like, and you're not that way, they're going to be disappointed. But if you can be upfront and honest, say, look, this is what it's going to be like, then they know that ahead of time, and you can hopefully explain why you're making that decision. It'd be great. So try to think about what might be the parents' perspective, what are their expectations, and then can you confront those expectations and try to help them reframe them if needed to be what's more realistic to what reality is going to look like. So team meeting example, John, obviously you found this. So this is my example. It's very thorough. Not all of it all of it may not be relevant to you. So like John said, you might adapt it or change different pieces of it. But basically how I came up with this is I kind of had a meeting, and over the years I realized, man, you know, this isn't said, or that's not said, or I wish parents would have known this beforehand. I added to my meeting, and slowly but surely over the years, this thing got longer and longer and longer as I started to realize all the problems I was having, and then I try to preemptively address them beforehand. Things like our goalkeeper is going to take the goal kicks, and we're going to try and play short. And I tell them right off the bat, we're going to give up the ball. We're going to kick it right to the team, and they're going to score on us. So I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen. So don't be mad when it happens. Because, again, then they're expecting it, and it's just one of the side effects of the development process. Anyway, so that's an example, like a preseason parent meeting. And then a player meeting example. So here's what I kind of do when I meet with my players. I'll bring some extra piece of paper, some pens, and I'll have all the players write down what they think makes a good teammate, what they think makes a good team. What does that mean to them? Oops. And then I'll ask them, what do they want to improve this year as an individual player and as a team? What would they like to get better at? And then from that is what I use to make value. So we talk about, I try to get their frame of mind on what makes a good teammate. So certain thing about that, someone who works hard, someone who's positive, someone who never gives up, someone who's supports each other. Um, what makes a good team? People they work together. They never give up. Things like that. Um, and I try to get them in that frame of mind, and then we'll talk about values. Okay, so of all those things that people shared, everyone writes their own, and then they can share some and say, does anyone want to nominate anything that could be a team value, something that no matter what happens, we're always going to act like this, or we're always going to do this thing. And I'll have them nominate, and depending on the group, you'll get 5 or 10 nominations, and have people share and talk about them, and talk about what. Yeah.
How do you ask that question to the kids? Do you say, because what I'm just thinking of is explaining what I mean by value. What does that mean, Coach?
So what I say is, a value means no matter what happens, good or bad, we are always this, or we always do this, no matter what. Okay. So for instance, I'll go back with the O3s. Their team values were positivity and never quit. So no matter what happens, we never quit and we're always positive. So if we're losing 14-0, we don't give up. And if someone makes a mistake, you don't rip them to shreds. No matter what. If we're up 14-0, we don't give up. Right? We keep playing hard. We don't relax. Those types of things. So that's how I define. No matter what, we are always this, or we always do this. So that's how I define it, and then I have them share things. So almost always I'll get never quit or never give up as something. Or a lot of times I might say stay focused, which is great because especially with young kids, boys especially, which neither of you are coaching right now. But if you can get them to make that a value, you can uphold that. You can say, look, you guys are the ones that said you guys wanted to do this all the time, and you're not doing that right now. So can we get with it? But anyway, I vote on them. So you nominate 6 of them or so, and sometimes they might use different words, and you try to delineate. Okay, those are pretty much the same thing. Can we categorize them as the same and get a name for it? But have an talk about what each of those nominations mean, and then have a vote. And I would say no, you stick with 3 at the most, right? Like 2 or 3, and those become the things that you guys, that again, drive your behavior, drive your decisions, no matter what happens. So that's a team meeting I like to have. And I would carve out 20 minutes at a practice from some point beginning of the season. And ideally, I would do this in the fall, and it lasts all the way through the end of the spring. But there's nothing wrong with doing that now if you haven't had anything like that yet. Anyway, so that's any thoughts on that?
No, I really like it. I like how you kind of get them to give you their expectations right now. I'm going to try that. I like that.
Right, and they can't. That's the best way to hold them accountable, is by things that they decided that were important. There's no way that they can say that they don't care about it. They decided it.
Now, do you read through the, what makes a good teammate, what makes a good team? Do you have them share that, or what do you do when they're writing that down?
So each question I'll have them work on it, and then I might have some people share. Yes, and that what kind of helps them get the right frame of mind in terms of, because almost all the time if you say what makes a good teammate, no one's going to say they always win or they score lots of goals. They'll always say things that are value based. So that's how you kind of set the tone. And then so I'll share those things and I'll collect them and I'll look at them myself. And depending on what age you have, so for each of your ages, I'd keep it pretty simple like this. If I was working with high school age kids, I might say, like, what are your long-term goals in soccer? What are your long-term goals in life? And so a year ago, last spring, when I was working with the U17 boys at Ajax, I didn't know what to expect. I had them do that. I wrote down these things, but I also had them write down what are your long-term goals for soccer. And I realized that most of those boys didn't care to play in college. And they weren't at the level probably anyway, but it was good to know that they kind of were in touch with that and that they knew that they didn't really care that much about playing college. They all had other aspirations, being a doctor, being a whatever. And so that really helped me realize, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. So that's how I hold them accountable for being good people, but I don't, I might not be I might not have as high of a standard for them in terms of the results of their play. They're 17 years old or 16 going on 17, and they're at a level where they can be really held accountable, and I can be strict with them. But maybe I ease up a little bit in certain regards, or not. Because, if you got a kid who's like, I want to go play pro, and they're slacking off, or I don't want to say slacking off, but they're, they're making a mistake and they're not, angry about it and trying to really focus and make it better, you'd be like, dude, you're trying to play at another level. You got to start holding yourself to a higher standard. Whereas if I'm playing with these guys, I realized, okay, they're just kind of here for fun and to enjoy it, enjoy each other, and enjoy the experience. So I want them to focus and work hard, which they did, but they make a mistake, and so what? And I don't really get on them too much because I know that that's not, this isn't really their primary aspiration. So anyway, again, with your groups, I probably wouldn't get into that as much and mostly focus on this good teammate stuff. I'd have them share it. I would collect them and look at it myself. It gives you some good insight to your team, your players. So I'd have them write their name on it. So what I might do is sometimes for nominations, I've done two processes depending on the team. I've done it where I have them say it verbally in the moment, or I just collect the papers after they share their answers. I go back home, I tally them up. Okay, who said the same things? And I saw that work hard was on there 7 times and never quit was on there 4 times, whereas work together is on there once, so maybe work together won't be one. But I'll nominate the top 4 or 5 of them, and then bring that back the next day and have a shorter meeting for only maybe 5 minutes and say, okay, here's what we went over yesterday. So many of you said this and that, so let's vote on what our final ones are going to be. So I've done it both ways like that. Anyway, then it comes down to now how do you reinforce it and uphold those throughout the season. So that's all I've got. Any questions? Thoughts?
No, that's great. If you'll email that out again.
Yes, I will. I'll email you the replay, and that way you can. It'll be the video, but you can just, if you want to look at that, it'll slide, fast forward to the end.
Okay.
All right. Renee, good?
Yep, all good.
All right. I'll be looking out for your development plan and progress, Renee. John, if you want to share, that'd be great. Or I know you said you wanted to show some sessions to me, I think.
Yeah, I'll send you the development plan I put together. I'd love to get your feedback on it, and then I probably tomorrow night I'll have time. I'm just trying to finalize a session that I want to get your feedback on, so I'll email that over to you hopefully tomorrow.
Okay. We also need to chat, John. I just want to talk to you over the phone about your session I observed. So.
Okay.
So when you send that to me or text me or something, just let me know. During the day, anytime pretty much works for me this week. Evenings after 7:30 work. So.
Okay.
Anyway, so let me know.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I figured if I shoot you the lesson plan, we could talk about both things at the same time then.
All right, that works too.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Zach. Have a good
All
one,
right.
Renee.
Thanks. You too.